Thanks for asking me to be here today, Sean. I've been just panning back and forth between everyone's names and faces, and it's just so nice to be connected to other alcoholics. It's really, really cool. I see Carissa down there in Orlando. Hi, Carissa. Hi, Lorelai. It's so beautiful to see you. Oh my gosh, it's just so cool. I mean, all of these people should rightly be dead, and they're just fucking not. They're just crushing it in life right now during a pandemic. It tickles me to death to see people who are getting sober in the middle of a pandemic. And I mean, I mean, my hat's off to you. This is incredible. Uh, that whole quarantining thing was pretty cool, and then I got knocked up, and so I'm a little nauseated right now. So if you see me kind of like hanging out and doing this for a minute, then I'm just trying not to puke. So I got sober at 22, March 7th of 2008, and I got sober in Salt Lake City, and it was a fucking ride to get there. I ended up in treatment and wilderness therapy program for the first time at 16. And then I went into a therapeutic boarding school for the next approximately 2 years. And that was cool. Not really. And then I left, went to college for a little while, relapsed. And by the time I was 20, I had spent 3 years of my life in institutions. Which is it's just really not what I had envisioned for my late teen years. I really wanted to be drunk that whole time when there was minimal consequences, but instead I was intermittently trying to get sober. I didn't really think that it was going to be an issue. I didn't really think that I could not drink. And it was very frustrating to come to the conclusion that I couldn't successfully. So I'd spent 3 years of my life in institutions, and I was getting ready to go back in for like round 4 or 5 of treatment. And yeah, it was crazy. I really didn't want to go back into treatment. I had left Mississippi with a couple suitcases. I left my dog. I left all my shit at this 400 square foot apartment that I shared with a buddy of mine. And at one point we had like ferrets and rabbits and cats and like 2 or 3 dogs. And it was kind of a shit show. And yeah, as soon as I left Mississippi, I went back, and I was trying to get back to the place where I'd been when I lived outside in wilderness therapy, where I had felt okay in my own skin. And I don't know if there was ever going to be a time when I actually felt okay in my own skin again, but I had to give it a try, because it was either that or I was going to kill myself. And I just left, and I left Mississippi, and I went out to Utah, and I had no plan. And there was this place called Pioneer Park, and I was just going to fucking sleep in it and go to a job interview the next day. And as soon as I made the most minimal effort, like I didn't get sober that day. I didn't get sober that year, actually, but I had made the smallest effort to better my life. And I'd asked for a minute bit of help. And after that, I don't know, these small miracles started happening in my life. I got into Salt Lake City on a plane, and this guy and his wife and their 2 kids, who had hung out with the 2 kids in the plane, they invited me to stay with them. And so I stayed at their house while I was getting ready to go to this job interview. I failed the shit out of the drug test, and couldn't get the job. And I told the field director at the time, I said, if you send me home, I'm probably going to die of an overdose, because like I can't keep doing this. I had started using it intravenously. I had started drinking every day, and drinking eventually lost me that job. I eventually drank myself to the point where I started smelling every day, just like all the stuff you really want to do when you're like in your 20s. And And sorry, just I've got really bad acid reflux right now. I'm in my third trimester. I only have 11 weeks left before I give birth to my second child. And I'm just a little pukey right now. Sorry about that. I will not throw up. God is my witness. So I got out there. This lady let me stay with her for like a month while I sobered up, and then they let me try out for the job again. And I ended up working the next year in wilderness therapy, helping teenagers get sober. And so I would work 8 days in a wilderness setting, and then I would have 6 days off. And on those 6 days off, for the first couple months, I was able to like not do any hard drugs. I didn't drink. And then after that, the wheels fucking fell off. And I started smelling like booze every day. And that eventually got me fired. And I really wanted to work with kids, and I wanted to like try and make the world a better place. And I couldn't do any of that. I was just too drunk to function. And my roommates were getting ready to kick me out. And I had been homeless for about 6 months when I moved to Utah. For the first 6 months I lived there, and I slept on people's couches, and pretty much anybody who would just take me in as sort of a random person in their house. I slept at a house of a yard sale for the people that I met, and just like a bunch of random shit like that happens when you're drinking heavily. You wake up and you're like, where am I? And who the fuck are you? And then you just sort of like go about your day like it's no big deal, you know? And that's what my alcoholism looked like. It looked like this sort of like blundering, like chances of maybe getting sober, and then me just pulling the rug out from under myself. And I adamantly refused to do the steps of AA. I hated Alcoholics Anonymous. They had made me go to meetings when I was in rehab, and I genuinely loathed everything about it. I wanted nothing to do with it. I didn't want to go to 12-step meetings. I didn't want to hear about the 12 steps. And I sure shit wasn't going to do a 4-step, because that just sounded like a really bad time. And during my institutionalized periods, anytime I had shared something, it had gone directly to my parents, even in my adulthood. And so there was no confidentiality. And so I had no belief that the things that I told my sponsor were going to stay there. And when she told me that she had told all of her secrets to someone, that they kept them, I was like, maybe she'll like hold on to a few of them, you know? But I was really expecting somebody to like jump out of the closet and like 5150 me. And I was terrified. I was terrified to get into sobriety because I was afraid of losing my ability to be in charge of myself again. I was afraid of getting institutionalized. I was terrified of losing my mind, and I really didn't want to die. But AA was kind of the last road in the house. I'd exhausted all my other options. So I come into the program, and my eyes aren't quite working right. And I start going to this young people's meeting, and there's this chick there, and she's got like purple hair, and she's really nice to me. And she's a couple years younger than me, but she has like 2 years of sobriety, and she's like not even 20. Like she's maybe 19. And she has 2 years of sobriety, and she's doing the deal, and she's getting stuff done. And we were driving to this pizza place, you know, driving back from this pizza place, and we would give the pizza to the homeless guy, because they were like, service is what we do. And like, you know, everybody piles in, and you go give the pizza to the homeless people. And on the way down to the homeless shelter, I saw this big ass rat on the side of the road. This fucking huge rat. I was like, I've got to see what this is, you know, because it's like, this sounds really strange, but this is going to tie back in. And it was not a rat. It was a baby raccoon. And for my about first 3 months of sobriety, I had a raccoon in my purse every meeting I went to. A fucking raccoon. And sometimes it would crawl out of my purse and up on my shoulder, and it would shit down my back, and it would like at people. And the love and tolerance of Alcoholics Anonymous was truly visible in those days, because you cannot keep, in the state of Utah, you are not allowed to keep a raccoon because they can carry rabies. And so if anybody had wanted to call animal control, they really could have. There was really good reason for me not to have a raccoon in the meeting. But the alcoholics there kind of looked me up and down. They're like, she's she's fresh, you know, like she needs to be here. And so they let me stay with my baby raccoon shitting on my back, my eyes not quite working right, and not really wanting to do the steps, and telling people to go fuck themselves a lot. And they were just very gentle and kind. And I asked this lady to be my sponsor, and she flat out told me no. She's like, I will hurt your feelings way too much. You'll probably kill yourself. But I have a friend who's probably a lot gentler for you. And she hooked me up with this lady, and this lady was so gentle, so kind, so fucking patient. I called her every day for the first 3 months being like, are you sure I can't take diet pills? I got people asking me if I'm pregnant because my liver's not doing so hot, right? And I look like I'm 6 months pregnant now. This is what pregnancy looks like now. Like this is what it looked like when I got sober too. And so people are asking me all the time, like, are you pregnant? Is that why you stopped drinking? And I'm like, no, my body's not working right. And it was really hard to not want to go and like go off on a bender and do a bunch of blow and do a whole bunch of drugs and like lose weight and try and like be that perfect ideal that I had in myself. And my sponsor just kept telling me, just wait. And these people kept saying this really fucking annoying thing, which was just wait until the miracle happens. And I was like, this fucking miracle is taking a really long time. I wish it would hurry right the fuck up, you know? And it just didn't. And it didn't hurry up. And it took its sweet time. And I think it was like about 3 weeks into sobriety, I woke up on the couch, and I lived in this punk house, and like we sold drugs out of there. And I was drunk for months in that house, for probably like 6 months straight, just straight drunk. And I woke up at 3 weeks sober on the sofa, and I had a nightmare that I drank. And I was terrified when I woke up. And it was at that point when I really realized, I was like, this thing isn't going to get any better, is it? Like, it's not. I've tried everything that I can do, and it's not going to get any better. And I kept staying around, and then I ended up getting a new place, ended up moving out of that house and trying to clean it up. Sometimes you have to break back into the places that you just moved out so you can clean it up and make the amends right, you know, because you're that sick in the head. And so I broke back into the house and just cleaning things up because we'd spray painted a bunch of stuff downstairs, and people weren't really happy about that. And I look back now that I'm in my 30s, and I look back at my 22-year-old self, and I just marvel that like I didn't die or get arrested like my first year of sobriety, because it was just so fucking weird. And then I ended up doing the steps, and I had this, I held on long enough to have a spiritual experience. And the spiritual experience was this really cool moment where I realized that I wasn't alone, and I didn't have to die alone, you know. And it started out of like looking out at the rain and realizing that there's like some sort of symbiotic relationship that as people we have with the planet that we live on. And then it was people being kind enough to me to not try and fuck me in AA. Right? Because you have like, there's some predatory culture sometimes, you know, and people get there. But there was this group of people who were so kind, and they were like, nobody fuck her. She's going to die. And like, don't prey on the newcomer. And they were adamant about that. And they were very welcoming in that sense. And it felt like a sense of safety for me as a woman. You know, and as a woman, like walking around in society, I don't feel that way all the time. I carry my keys in my hands. When I go to my car, I have a machete in the back of my truck. Like, you know, there's like certain things that I had to do my whole life. And there was a lot of trauma that came with it. And so when I got in AA and nobody tried to fuck me, and they let me stay with my raccoon, and they were nice to me, and the lady was patient enough with me to do the steps, it showed me that maybe that care of God in the third step was big enough to get me sober. And then I did the fourth step, and it was really terrifying, because it opened up a lot of shit that I was not ready to look at. And if I'd had to get well on my first fourth step, I would have died. I do a regular inventory. I go to therapy. This is a non-ending process. It is cyclical. There are going to be things that continue to come up that you have the opportunity to work on. And if we're lucky, we get to do that. And so after I finished my fifth step, I did kind of a shoddy 6 and 7, 8 and 9. I worked really hard on, and I made this really cool mistake that I didn't realize that I'd made until I was well into my sobriety. And it talks about in the big book that we don't grovel before anyone, that, you know, God is the maker, and that we have that, right? We have that care and that capacity of whatever that looks like for you. And that's what we have that connection with. And I kept trying to make it so that I was going to be worthy in somebody else's eyes by making amends enough and saying I was sorry enough. And a sponsor of mine, when I had around 7 years, she's like, when are you going to start making amends to yourself? And I was like, what does that even mean? And well, that's my 5 minutes. So I think I've got about 5 minutes to wrap up. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. And we do not crawl before anyone. We do not shrink. Thanks, Sean. And I, you know, when I started looking at that, it put me right sized with God, you know, and I was able to be right sized with my fellow human beings in a way that I hadn't before. About 3 years into sobriety, I got married to a guy who I met in AA. His buddy had told him about the raccoon, and he was still into me, which was pretty neat. I had over a year at that time, and we just celebrated 10 years of marriage in January. The little girl crying downstairs is our toddler. She's 3.5. And I just want to share how the program works in my life today. So a couple weeks ago, I had a shit day, right? And I'm pukey, I'm exhausted. I've dealt with a lot of shit in sobriety, right? I've had cancer, I've dealt with infertility, I've had surgeries, I've had to be on pain medications. A lot of stuff has happened, right? And I got a real punch to the tit over Christmas, and we had a high AFP level in my testing for the daughter that I'm pregnant with, which means that you are likely to have a spinal abnormality, such as spina bifida. And sometimes the fetus will not survive that. And sometimes if they do, they will have a very difficult time. And during that time period, I did a lot of prayer because I got the call before Christmas, and I have a toddler. So during the time of Christmas, I'm trying to cry in the bathroom and take care of my toddler and be with my husband and give him time to cry in the bedroom and take care of myself and do all of these things. And we really had to lean in together and decide what it was going to look like if we were going to have more kids, right? Like what links am I willing to go to, right? To let go of myself and to be there with another human being. What am I willing to do? And I had to take a really hard look at that, and it was uncomfortable. And we went back a couple days after Christmas. We had a full ultrasound done, and the daughter that I'm pregnant with, India Jane, is healthy. She's happy, healthy, and whole. And I'm incredibly grateful. But as you can imagine, that leaves you a little bit on an emotional roller coaster, right? Since doing a lot of not sleeping, it was kind of fucked up. And I wake up one day and I really need to take a nap, right? And it's in the middle of the afternoon, and my toddler is just getting to the point where she's done with nap time. Like we try and follow the child, and she's just like, I'm done with naps, Mom. I'm not doing them anymore. And we drive her around. I'm like driving her around for like 2 hours, and I've just finished driving her around like the fucking mountainside, right? And I've had this like trauma thing happen over Christmas. I'm still teaching over Zoom. I teach preschool over Zoom. It's like herding fucking cats into a swimming pool. And my daughter's not napping. And so I go upstairs and I lay down and I'm like, just go to bed. Just go to sleep. And like, we don't yell. Like we don't hit, we don't yell. Like we don't do that. Right. But I lost my shit for a minute. And I said, I think Mommy needs to take a minute. Right. And I paused and I went downstairs and I was able to make amends to her. And I know that the program is working in my life because the next day she came to me and she said, Mommy, yesterday I noticed that you were really angry and you were really sleepy and sad. And when you got upset, it really scared me and I didn't like it. And in the future, I hope that you will be a little bit kinder and more patient with me. And she says, I love you even when you're mad, even when you're sad, and even when things aren't going your way. And the amount of reparenting that I've had to do since becoming a parent in Alcoholics Anonymous is pretty intense. But that moment, when I realized that she had taken all of that stuff of being able to stand up for herself and set a boundary, and then be able to go back and other points in our relationship and take accountability for herself and make amends when she makes a mistake, she's doing the things that I hope to do as a human being. And I know that when she is taking on those characteristics, it means that as a human being in my house, I am embodying that. So regardless of whether or not I'm in a pandemic, regardless of whether or not I'm teaching on Zoom, and regardless of whatever it is that I have going on, the thing that keeps me coming back is that people are still getting here and getting 30 days. And if nobody's told you, you are incredibly fucking important to Alcoholics Anonymous, and we need you here, and we love you, and you don't have to drink anymore, and you don't have to feel like a giant shitbag if you feel that way. Or if you feel like everybody else is a giant shitbag, you don't have to feel that way anymore either. So thank you so much for letting me share. Thank you for being here, and I'm now going to stop talking. Thank you.